Hello and welcome to Midlife Meltdown. I'm Ian, and in today's video I'm going to talk about some of the main changes that I've seen since exiting my toxic relationship with someone suffering from narcissistic personality disorder. As I've said in previous videos, I was married to somebody for 18 years that was suffering from narcissistic personality disorder and also traits of borderline personality disorder without me even knowing what they were. Now, I've been fully exited from that relationship for about the last 4 to 5 months. So I thought I'd take the time to give some insight into how my life's changed, how I feel about it, and more importantly, I guess, what are the key steps that really made a difference for me in the way that I feel. So let me start with how I felt during the really bad times, the last 3 years. Ultimately, I went from a full range of emotions, from being completely suppressed as an individual, feeling completely introverted, all the way through to being suicidal, to being very close to committing suicide, and everything in between. But mostly, and I think my father put this the best, is that I became a shell of a person. I receded inside myself so much that even the simplest things in life were difficult. And this had major impacts on every aspect of my life, on my interactions with other people, on my interactions with my family, to the amount of abuse that I was willing to put up with, to massively impacting my career to the point where I feel extremely lucky to still have my job and working very hard to try and recover my career. Within that period, I suspect I suffered some form of minor stroke, or at least palsy in my face. Now, I've always had a slightly crooked mouth, which is, something I have to live with. But at some point during one of the arguments in that period, I literally felt like a physical snapping in my head. And since then, I've noticed that the crookedness is slightly enhanced, and it's almost like a mini stroke. And I've never had it checked out medically, which I probably should do. But that was something very physical that I went through. Now, on top of that, during that time, I believe I actually started developing narcissistic traits myself. And this is where I feel like I've got a really good understanding of the roots of narcissistic personality disorder and how it manifests itself. And without going into too much detail, but during some of the most intense parts of pain and the abuse that was going on to me, I started feeling like I needed to soothe that pain. And my method of soothing that pain was looking for other people and latching on to other relationships and seeking comfort from other people. And in turn, some of my actions within that time hurt other people. And it's only really now that I'm removed from the pain, and truly removed from the pain, and in a calm environment, that I see that really clearly. And the strange thing is, at the time, the feelings that I felt, whether they were feeling like I was in love with someone or feeling like I wanted to be in love with someone, felt real. And I believe that's what the narcissist goes through. I felt like I wanted to latch on to someone else. And it wasn't like I was deliberately feeling like I want to latch on to someone else. But it's really clear when you look at just the high level actions that you're taking that they're not rational behavior. And now that I'm removed from it and calm and in a calm situation, I look back and it's really easy for me to see that, I might as well have been drinking a bottle of scotch and drowning my sorrows. In fact, some of the times during that, I wish my coping mechanisms weren't what they were, and that I did, turn to drink or turn to, drugs or whatever it is. It would have been maybe less harmful to other people, but then maybe even not, because self-harm harms other people, and my family would have started to worry a lot. So it became really apparent to me that the root of abuse, the root of hurting other people, isn't always intentional, but sometimes the pain that you feel internally. And I believe this is what the narcissist feels, that whether that pain is real, perceived, whatever it is, it feels real to them. That pain you feel is so strong that you're willing to do anything to numb it, and you're willing to take from anyone else in order to numb that pain because of its intensity. So the other aspect of my life that has changed significantly since exiting the relationship is just the logistics of my life and the physical difficulty of it. So ultimately, I've gone from being in a marriage as a couple that have been very successful with jobs and careers and working hard and saving money to build a lifestyle and to build and renovate a house that, I thought ultimately I would grow old in and die in, effectively my dream house of raising a family of animals that, we shared responsibility for, to being on my own and having to manage all that myself. And, my 9 to 5 now, my Monday to Friday is extremely tough. I basically wake up around 5 a.m. and by the time I'm done walking dogs, performing at my career, coming home and looking after the house and the animals again in the evening, I'm lucky if I can get to bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock and do that all again. But the difference is I'm happy to do it. My brain's in a good place and it feels rewarding. It feels like my life is under my control again. So, I come from a very working class family and hard work was drilled into me as a child. And as strange as it sounds, like I've always said that hard work is easy. You just have to physically get up and do it. Conceptually, there's no challenge to it. It's just physically hard. And I think that sums up how I would say my life is now. If your brain is in the right place, if your mentality is correct, then you can tackle most things in life, no matter how hard they are. There are some things that are unsurmountable, but if you're making smart decisions and working hard, you'll be okay. And that's where I feel like my life is after exiting my relationship. And as far as key tangible changes in my life that I've noticed, there are a few. And the immediate one is almost the physical difference that you feel in the raising of or the releasing of stress and anxiety. So previously, as I was exiting the relationship, myself and my ex would still cross paths, for a week or so at a time, or like a long weekend as she was starting to move out and we were finalizing things. I would always feel this sense of like dread. It's almost like shell shock when we'd be together in the house for like 3 or 4 days at a time. I would get this kind of anxious shell shock come over me, and it would take about 2 to 3 days after she had gone again for that to dissipate and for me to start to almost be able to breathe again. This feeling of just freedom would come over me. It's really hard to explain, but all the time that I was in that shell shock state, my ability to make decisions, to cope with just normal life, my job, whatever it was really impaired. But 2 or 3 days afterwards, I felt like normality just seeping back into my body. And the only way I can describe it is, looking back, I felt like for a long period of time, I wasn't myself. I'd lost who I was. And as scary as that sounds, the really encouraging part of that is how fast who you were comes flooding back to you. And I'm talking about who I was 20 years ago. I feel like I'd forgotten who I was as a teenager, how I used to act, the things I used to like doing. But that feels like it comes back really, really quickly, which is a really nice thought. And I start to think like myself. And don't get me wrong, there are things that I've learned, and I don't want to disparage my ex at all. I mean, she has her own problems, and that caused problems in our relationship, and I have my own problems that allowed me to go through that. But there are things that I've learned within that marriage and that I'd learned from her that are positive as well. And I feel like I've got a really good merge of who I was as a person, and I feel like I was a good person when I was young. What I've learned from her and in that relationship as well, and a lot of that's drive and ambition. So I feel like I've merged the two of those together, and I also, on top of that, I feel like I've come out of it all with an added strength and almost invulnerability. Like I feel like I've taken as much pain as I could possibly take, and there'll be more to come, but I feel like my resistance to pain, or at least my ability to cope with it, is indestructible at the moment. I feel like I'm ready to tackle anything in the world. So those three things combined leave me with a really positive feeling, and I think that's ultimately why I feel like I want to make these videos, to try and make sure that I'm using what time I have, what little time I have, to try and pass that message on and to try and help anyone that may be going through the same thing. And there's little other things in my life that I've noticed as well that just are almost like grass, almost like flowers springing back up again. So, a really strange thing at work, and the job I'm doing at the moment has pretty much been, I've been there pretty much for the about the same time as this has been going on. So, the me that people have seen in the office hasn't really been the real me. And it was a strange thing. Two strange things happened in my office a while ago. My direct manager, made a comment in one of my one-on-ones with her, a few weeks ago, and said, have you noticed you've been singing in the office? And I hadn't, and I used to a lot. And she just noticed that I'd been a lot happier, and she's known what's going on, And she said, yeah, you've been whistling and singing around the office recently. And I'm like, oh, I guess that must mean I'm feeling a lot better. And I didn't realize I was doing it. I tend to be a bit of a parrot, and I hear a song and mimic it for ages, all day. And the other thing that happened is in another office that I have to go to, someone actually asked me to stop whistling because I was whistling a song on repeat over and over. And that's a negative thing that I do. It was a joke, it was a very friendly kind of thing to do, but it was a real tangible sign for me that my spirit is coming back, that I was starting to feel free and happy again. And that's really encouraging. The other really tangible thing I've noticed is, despite living in the house I do in the village I live in at the moment, I've lived here for at least full time since 2014, but owned the house since 2011. And suddenly over the last month, 2 months, I know so many more of my neighbours, and I can't explain why that is, other than that it's that introspection, that receding inside yourself, that even though I'd met some of my neighbours and I kind of knew them on a surface level, I would always kind of close myself in, and my world was effectively my marriage, and that was it. And the amount of people that not only I've met in my close vicinity, but I've got to know, and people that have come over for like drinks and cups of teas and things like that, and just talking about the dogs. The amount of people that I've developed a deeper relationship with is tangible. It's noticeable, and it's nice. It makes me feel like, again, I'm rediscovering who I am and starting to build other connections that really help me get through that. So, that's a huge benefit, and something I think you can look forward to if you are exiting a toxic relationship. And within that as well, the amount I've seen my family over the last few months is staggering, and that's a fairly obvious one. I mean, obviously relationships and part of the control and the closing of a relationship that you go through with someone suffering from NPD does tend to exclude family. And again, it's a big guilt feeling of mine. I didn't realize that there were members of my family that didn't really feel comfortable coming up to visit anymore because of the relationship, but they didn't really want to say anything, because it was my life, and they didn't really want to rock the boat. But the amount I've seen my family and really engaged with my family in the last few months is a really significant step, and it's been pleasurable. It's not just seeing them, or it's feeling like the relationships are starting to come back to what they were, and that for me is a huge improvement and a huge kind of positive in my life, because I'm not getting any younger, and my parents aren't getting any younger, and there are new members of the family being added all the time, and I'd really lost connection with a lot of them for a long time, and I feel like there's a lot of bridges to build there now, and a lot of catching up to do, which is I'm looking forward to. It's a very positive thing. And the last major change that I've noticed, or at least I've consciously made, is really trying to address what I think are potentially my own codependency issues and my issues putting up boundaries. So I've made a very conscious decision not to get into any relationships at all. No romantic relationships, for who knows how long, at least for 6 months. So going through this, I'd entered into relationships or toyed with the idea of relationships, to ultimately ease my own pain, or to at least escape from the situation I was in. And coming out and just having the time and the space to myself, and consciously spending a lot more time with myself. I'm a lot more observant about, the intentions of others and my intentions and what I need. And ultimately I've for better or for worse, I've made myself a lot more selfish in terms of what time I'm willing to give to people and what I think people might need from me. And I'm very conscious of, I want to make sure that while I say I'm being selfish, I don't mean it to be in a mean way, but I'm going to ruthlessly dedicate myself to doing what I need to do to heal myself and to fix myself for a better future. And whether or not I enter into a relationship in the future, it will be a very conscious decision and a very slow decision to make. I certainly don't think I'll jump into a deep relationship ever again. And not to say that it'll be a casual relationship, but I don't think I'll dive head first. And my perception of what I think love is very different as I've got older and I've gone through this. But really, I'm just making sure that I'm putting up boundaries that I think I should have put up before, and being very guarded about who I allow into my personal life, because I realize allowing people in too quickly and too deeply can not only impact your life negatively. But if you make the decision to change your mind, it can be very painful for other people that feel like they're getting close to you to have to push those boundaries back again. And I really want to avoid ever doing that again in the future, and just basically focus on being me and looking after my family. And in the future, if I do meet somebody who I think I can share time with, to do it on a very gradual basis. But at the moment, it's the least of my interests, and I feel like I've literally got about 5 to 10 years worth of catching up to do of things that I want to do with my own life. And this is part of it. I'm enjoying making these videos at the moment. And that's about it for now. I said it was going to be a short video. I've probably made it longer than I intended, but hopefully that's useful. I just wanted to give a quick update of where I am and the changes that I've seen. If you're going through a similar experience, or you have any questions about exiting a toxic relationship, or narcissistic personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder, please raise your questions in the comments below and I'll respond to them. If you like what you see in these videos are helping you, then please help me grow the channel. Subscribe using the subscription button, hit the notification bell, and share the videos with anyone you think may be helped by them. And that's it. I'll see you again soon with a new video.